name's Matt. I was the animal care supervisor. Now I'm the guest relations supervisor. That was a new switch. I like dealing with the people and trying to help them figure out how we can help with their pet. That's something that I think I'm very passionate about. The animal care is obviously very important here, but I think we can't do what we do without the guests. And that's how we can help animals the most, is just through education. So let's see. So yeah, I've been in Escondido about 2 years now. I worked for maybe 2 months in San Diego before coming up here. I live up here in Escondido, about 10 minutes away. So it was awesome to be able to be this close to home and still work at a shelter like I was used to. I used to work up in Monterey, California at the SPCA there, which also had a really cool livestock setup. We had a nice barn, and we had chickens and all the cool things we have here that are not dogs and cats. Not that they aren't cool. I have a lot of dogs. So here in Escondido, I actually own and operate a small farm. It's an orchard with some vegetables. I do that with my wife and my son, Ozzy. He's 2. You can see him in that picture there with our ducks. And then you can see us at the farm stand. That is not our farm. That is our neighbor's farm. You can see also just a few pictures of my own animals. In the bottom left, that's Bug meeting the chickens for the first time. She had a bummer of a story when she came in, but I'm hoping she has fun now. She gets to meet chickens, and she's really nice to them, which is cool. I have some other dogs that aren't. She also gets to come to work with me every day and sleep on the floor. Up in the top left, that is Peepers. He's our pig, or one of our pigs, and then you can kind of see up above Peepers in the back, there's Noodle, our other pig. They actually came for kind of like I don't remember what that was that they came for, but they got to meet kids. They came here and they were kind of my ambassador animals. And then they actually
farm camp.
Oh, that was it. Okay, that was farm camp. All right. So that was not this last one, but the one before that. Now they're kind of huge, so it's a little more difficult to bring them, to put them in a Prius, I guess. And then, so they actually live with the chickens. And so far that's been a good setup for them, because we have coyotes and other predators, and the coyotes seem to stay away because there's 2 200-pound pigs sleeping with them. And then next to that is the answer to the age-old question, what's up? Chicken butts. That's my, those are 3 of my chickens there. And then down below that is, I just wanted to add a picture of the lengths that my wife and I go through to fix chicken ailments. This is one of our chickens who had, I believe she had bumblefoot, and we got this chicken cast for her to kind of hold her feet like in the right place and fix the little like bumble. I don't know what it's called, but yeah, so that helped actually. I had another picture to add that was a chicken that we had in a bra because it had sour crop or an impacted crop, all kinds of stuff, but we can get into crops and all that stuff when we talk about chicken care and feeding them. But yeah, so it actually held her crop up so she could digest her food properly. And I had this picture of the chicken in a dog sweater used to hold her crop up, and she's in our house, and my wife is reading a magazine to her, and I snuck that picture, but I couldn't find it to add it to the slide. Other than that, I have dogs, a lot of them, cats, pigs, ducks. Yeah, so I got a lot to do when I get home after work. We can move on to that next one. We can get started with the chicken chat.
And if we have any, I do want to apologize if we have any technical difficulties. That is outside in our livestock area. And you might notice one of our guests is our camera focused on our chickens. So those are some of the available chickens that we have for adoption at our Escondido campus, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of our available animals later on in this presentation. Let me get the next slide going here. All right.
All right. Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to do my best here to tell you all that I know about chickens. I'm by no means an expert. I would say more an enthusiast. I've had chickens for 6 or 7 years, and I've learned some things. I think working in the shelter, I've learned even more. So in this presentation, we'll just go over briefly about the history of chickens. Cami helped out a lot with that information because that's one subject that I wasn't good at in school is history, but there's some really cool stuff about chickens. They've actually been around forever. We'll touch on breeds a little bit. I know some breeds, but not all of them. There's a lot. And then we'll go over just some things about if you can have chickens, where, what cities, city limits, ordinances, all of that, and then just how to care for the chickens. So what type of housing requirements and feeding and other body language type things. So as much as I can remember, I will tell you. So let's get started then.
And I think that we also are curious, Matt and I are curious about why you're joining us tonight. Do you have chickens? Are you interested in maybe adopting some chickens? Feel free to answer us in the chat and let us know.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see it. If you type in, I have this many chickens or I want this many chickens, I think I can see them pop up and that'd be cool. I'm curious. Do we have other enthusiasts? 4 chickens, interested in more, I think, is the rest of that.
Yeah.
I hope.
So somebody says, I have 4 chickens and would be interested in adopting. Someone else says, I want to convince my husband to adopt some chickens today. Well, hopefully your husband is watching and we can convince him too. Somebody else said, I volunteered at a shelter and they have chickens sometimes. Somebody else said they have 10 chickens that they have raised from chicks. So they want to learn more about chickens. Somebody else has roosters. That's awesome because we always need rooster adopters too. Somebody else has 3 hens. And somebody else just loves learning about all animals, not just dogs and cats.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. I have so many to learn about at home. And I think chickens are the ones that I've probably spent the most time dealing with because I have to figure out all the intricacies of caring for them. Yeah, let's see. Can we move on to the next slide and I'll see where we start there. I think it's history. Yeah, so a lot of these things I didn't know. I did not know that they dated back as far as they did, and from Southeast Asia. That's really cool. They descended from 4 species, and now there's over 500. And Cami, there was something about 350 specific breeds. That do you remember what that was? Because I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if you can even. Yeah, there we go.
So there are more than 350 combinations of physical features known today and over 500 breeds found throughout the world.
Okay,
so physical
thank you. Yeah.
features can be like the comb that's on the top of their head or their wattle down below.
Yeah, I wonder if that's one of the wild jungle fowl in the picture. It looks very tall. It also kind of looks like a fighting rooster, which you notice they're super tall too. And we unfortunately have to kind of find these fighting rooster rings, I guess, and we go to them through the Humane Society, which actually we're able to find homes for some of them. It's a long process though, and it's not easy, but we try to make sure we find an actual home that is not going to use them for, fighting. I think, yeah, there are a lot of those distinguishing features that are pretty cool. Some of these birds that we have in here, they're kind of tall. They're also young. So you can see, this one's my friend. It's been in here for a really long time. Actually, if someone could name this one, I would be very grateful. In terms of breeds, these ones, it's hard to say exactly what they are. They look like Easter eggers, which will lay different colored eggs. So they'll be bluish, greenish. Sometimes they'll lay like this really like dark green. They're really pretty eggs. You can kind of see in their, well, you might not be able to, but you can see in their pattern. That's how I could tell they're Easter eggers. That's mostly what I have. I think another one of my favorites are buff Orpingtons, which buff is just the color. It's gold-ish, but they're huge. And I had one named Barbara, and she was awesome. She just she ruled the roost. She was a lovely lady. And then Silkies, I had some Silkies at one point too. Unfortunately, they were sick when we got them, and we still have one around. She's actually not a Silkie. She's a Polish, I think, or yeah, she's really pretty. She has this big kind of crown of feathers that are black and white with like, I think she's laced, which just means her feathers have these little stripes around them. So she's an awesome chicken. Her name's Cruella Deville, just because of her colors. I guess we can head to the next Polish. Okay, cool. We can head to the next slide there. And does anyone have any favorite breeds of chickens or any specific ones that you have at home that you're fond of? New Hampshire? I don't even know. I don't know what that is. Oh, okay. The red ones. Are those similar to Rhode Island Reds, or? I can only see, just so everyone knows, I can only see like a little bit, like the first maybe like, I don't know,
So
7 words.
They have Polish chickens, and their neighbors would love to come and see them. I have Polish chickens as well. I have 6 chickens. I have Polish chickens and Silkie chickens. Those are 2 of my favorite breeds of chickens because not only are they beautiful, but they have really great personalities too, and they're really great around kids as well. They tend to be really sweet. I have Bantam Silkies. So Bantam just means, Bantam comes in different breeds, and that just refers to a smaller size. So you can have standard chickens, and you can have Bantam chickens. So there's standard Silkies, and then there are Bantam Silkies, which are smaller. So I have some Bantam Silkies. Somebody else has Silkies, a New Hampshire, and a Jersey Giant. Oh, those are fun chickens too. Oh, and the Transylvania chickens, I think those are also called naked necks. They don't have feathers on their necks.
Yeah, I have a Bantam Rooster, which is, I don't know why. Well, I do know why. They're so funny. Like, they're my favorite thing. Hearing them, it's like the most ridiculous thing to me to hear a rooster with a tiny voice. So he's definitely my favorite chicken that we have. So moving on, if you're interested in chickens, just some things to consider if you can have a chicken or not. Zoning regulations, and certain areas will not allow roosters, which usually in city limits they won't. If you have a lot of neighbors, those are usually the places that won't allow roosters. Even I am worried about my roosters going off at, I don't know, 2 a.m. for some reason. But I have 4-ish acres, and so far they don't care. And my dogs are way louder than that too. So hopefully they drown out the roosters. And then hens, usually it just depends on the city and where you're at. I think we have a slide on the actual ordinances, but another thing to think about is predators and where you live. There are a lot of predators for chickens. In my area, coyotes are, I'd say, the #1 predator. They can hop like 6-foot fences, and I've seen them do it, and it's scary. They just whoop, right over the top. It's very surprising, but I have layers of fencing in between where our coyotes go up our driveway and the actual enclosures. And then I would also think about if you have dogs. I never fault my dogs for wanting to get in the chicken coop, because that's just kind of what they do. They either they want to play or they want to eat them. You never know. So I would consider, if they're sharing a fence line, that's something to think about. If you have the space to just totally separate them from other animals that could be predators. And then weather, I think where we live, or at least here in Escondido, it's really hot. I mean, they're starting to feel better now after the heat today. But there are always things you can do about that, like misters and those types of things. So I do know that San Diego City and like Escondido City will say no roosters. And then I don't remember all the amounts of chickens you can have, but I know a lot of it is based on the space that you have, or how close, how much distance you have between your neighbors, and that'll determine the number you can have. HOAs, CCRs, they obviously have their own rules, as well as the city ordinances on top of that. So that's something to look into. And then I know the county is also based on space and acreage. You can have a lot of chickens, and it's just how big is your property. And there are charts online, or tables that will show you how much space per chicken you need in terms of if you're allowed to, or how many you're allowed to have. Oh yeah, and then we can move on to the next one. I skipped ahead with the San Diego Escondido thing. Why have chickens? That is a great question that I asked my wife when she wanted them to begin with. We lived in Imperial Beach, and I had never even thought about getting a chicken. We were allowed to have 3 in our area, and they are really fun. Like, I think the personality is the big one for me. We just seeing them scratch around on the ground. I don't know. Hey, Cami, is the chicken screen down there still going? I don't know if people can see them walking around. You can see them do that little scratch in their personalities.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so in terms of sustainable living, there are eating eggs. If you eat eggs, then that is obviously a big plus. The eggs tend to be a lot more nutritious if you're feeding your animals well. At factory farms, it's kind of about mass producing eggs and chickens. So the feed is usually not as high quality, and the quality of the feed determines the quality of the eggs. And you can actually see it in the color of the egg as well. You'll notice if you buy like a store-bought egg, usually the yolk tends to be kind of, oh, sorry, I was reading the chat. So usually the egg from the store tends to be kind of like a faint yellow, but then you'll see the chickens you have at home, it's a really pretty like dark yellow, kind of orangish. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And the thickness of the egg as well is different, which you notice when you get your own chickens. I'd say, yeah, pest control is awesome. They can, if you have like plants that you're growing, they'll eat bugs around there. They'll also eat your plants, so you kind of have to pay attention to that. A cool thing that you'll see on farms is using chickens as a chicken tractor, which if you ever look at Mother Earth News, you can go on their website and just type in chicken tractor and they'll show you what those are. But it's basically like a mobile chicken coop that it's on wheels, and you kind of lift it up and wheelbarrow it around your property, and then you set it down over your chickens so they're safe, and they just work on this one little area, scratching around and tilling the soil and eating bugs, and it aerates your soil and makes it really good for planting. You could also do that even if you just have backyard chickens. If you build a garden box and build something to just set over the top of it, and when you're preparing your bed for the new season, have the chickens hop on there and just kind of scratch around for a while, and then you'll kind of see the difference in the soil. And then composting as well. That's something you can do with their poop, but it's really high in nitrogen. It also has phosphorus and potassium. So you'll see on your like fertilizer bottles, your NPK ratio. I don't know what it is for chickens exactly. I know it's really high in nitrogen, so you need to be careful, because if you just sprinkle chicken poop on your plants, they'll burn. But if you mix it up into the soil, which is something they're doing with those chicken tractors too, it'll I guess dilute it enough to make sure you're not burning up your plants. And then actually composting it, I think, is probably even better, because you're going through the process of warming up the compost and putting food scraps, and then you're making this really nice. See my TED talk on composting for more info on that. Cami, do you mind, or maybe I can switch it? I can't see the presentation anymore. Oh, there we go. Maybe, I guess I can. Okay, I think I got that one. So let's see. I'll make sure I didn't miss something here. Okay, so in terms of chicken care, it's actually pretty simple to set them up, and but there are a lot of things to know. And if you go on backyardchickens.com, you can watch people argue about the best types of food to give your chickens, or the best housing and the type of roosts and all that. But really, it's pretty simple if you want to set something up for yourself at home. I'll start with lifespan. They live about 5 to 10 years, depending on how well you keep them. So thinking about weather and thinking about feed, thinking about predators, and that is all really important when you're like building housing and stuff too. A few things that I do in terms of housing. This actually, I'm standing in an example, but this was just a shed sitting on the property here in Escondido that was going to be thrown out, and then we found out we're getting hundreds of chickens from from San Bernardino. So I just kind of chopped up some wood, and I karate chopped up some wood, and then I attached it to just little places for them. This is enrichment, but also this is naturally what they want. Is they want to be high up. They're prey for a lot of animals, so they feel safe up here. I wish you could see this one. It's on top of the door, but they try to get as high as they can, and that's also how they like establish pecking order. The top chicken goes to the top because that's the safest, and they'll fight each other all the way up there. But yeah, so just some basic things I'll point out here. And if you have a shed, you could do all this. I even have plastic sheds at home that I use. The one thing with that to know is that they seem to kind of radiate the heat more. So what I do is put misters in the shed, and then also I cut some holes at the top to let air come through the windows and out the top. This one, I'll point out a few things here. For roosts, this is what they want to sleep on, I would definitely say that you want to give them a flat roost. There are plenty of arguments about the size for their feet, but basically their feet sit on it. Their feet are flat while they're roosting. So when you get like a round bar, which actually we have them out here, it's more for fun than for sleeping. I hope they come in here at night, which I'm sure they will. But it's a little hard for them to balance if they're standing on something round, and you'll kind of see them struggle with it a little bit. But during the day for enrichment, those things are actually cool for them because it keeps them entertained. You can even buy these little swings to hang from the top, and they'll get on it and just swing back and forth, which I've never been able to make my chickens use the swing, but it's pretty cool to see. Let's see what else about housing. So for your predators, I would say if you have something like this, what I do at home, if I have a shed with a little area for them to go outside, everything's enclosed. And what you use to enclose it is super important because depending on your predators, but we have chain link here, which normally we're fine. We have a lot of, we're fenced in and we have parking lots and all this. So we don't have a lot of sneaky animals other than squirrels coming in here to eat their food. And generally they seem to be okay with that. But things like raccoons, they're really like, they can open like doors and unlock combination locks. I don't know. That may have been like a myth, but I read it on Backyard Chickens. But yeah, they can pull back chicken wire. So I'd say the important thing is to consider the size of the chicken wire, like a 1/4 inch. The square, like the grid should be a 1/4 inch or less, which kind of gets expensive, but it's much safer than just regular chicken wire. It's a lot stronger too. It's probably hard to see, but we reinforced all the windows in here with that, and I just stapled it to the outside. Also the top, there's kind of a peak to the roof out here. That is fully enclosed. And then what we usually do here is the ground will have chain link or chicken wire or something as well, because you can get a lot of animals digging under, and that's something like my dogs would do, but we add something to the outside. So if they're trying to dig under, it blocks them. They just meet more fence, and that seems to work most of the time. In terms of bedding, they don't really need bedding because they're sleeping on roosts, but I like to put straw down, or if you have the money to refresh, there are pine shavings. That is better, I think. I've had some issues with chickens that would eat the straw, and that's actually how Ginger, the one that had the impacted crop, she was eating straw. There could be a reason why she was eating straw, I'm not sure, but she ate enough of it to fill like her whole crop, and we had to get surgery for her, and that was crazy and expensive. And I would say just do the shavings if you can.
And just to interrupt me for a second, Matt, in case anybody doesn't know, a crop is an area in the bird right below their neck where they store their food. And that's why, like, for hand feeding baby birds, parent birds know just the right amount to feed, because birds can get issues with their crops with things impacted. If food isn't the right temperature, this is mostly when they're babies, they can have bacteria that grows in their crop. So that's why it's important to be giving them foods that will be going through their crop on a daily basis.
Yeah, and
crop out.
Yeah, to I guess explain a little bit about their crop. That's how they digest their food. So you'll see them scratching around on the ground and picking up little pebbles, and that actually fills their crop and grinds up the food and then sends the food the rest of the way. So that's a good thing to remember when you're feeding your chickens or setting them up. You can buy grit, and grit will either be just like a bag of little rocks, and you can put little bowls of it, and they'll just kind of peck at it. And then you can also do like oyster shells, which will grind up the food as well. It also gives them a little more calcium, which is good for their eggs. Yeah, well, I guess that's pretty much it on crops. But yeah, those are good things to consider. And see anything else about bedding?
Did you want to show us the nest boxes maybe that you made?
Oh yeah. I wonder, I'm gonna leave this camera. I'm gonna grab the other one to show the nesting boxes. So
this is a good question. So we talked about, so one of the risks for chickens, especially like in Escondido, and then also where I live in the Inland Empire, is chickens can have a really hard time when it's really hot, especially if it's triple digits. So it's really important to keep your chickens cool. In the summer, we have misters. In Escondido, I have misters for my chickens as well. I also put frozen water bottles in their water and replace them throughout the day when it's hot. But somebody was asking if they need, if chickens need heaters. And you did work on a farm in New York once, and we had chickens that would come in the barn at night, and I think the barn was heated though. I'm not sure, but for Southern California, at least for my chickens, I know they don't need heaters in the winter, but like colder environments, Matt?
I think, yeah, if you're living in a place that is really cold, it's always probably better for them to do that. I don't think it's absolutely necessary as long as they have like housing that keeps them away from the elements. But I know like for farms, a lot of the time they'll put heaters in there because that'll keep them laying eggs throughout the winter, because usually when it gets cold, they stop laying. So that'll just keep them kind of in production year round. But I would say if you can, why not give them a little bit of heat when it's cold? But yeah, I don't know if it's necessary.
I don't think
I'd have to look that up.
Somebody said that they grew up in Michigan and they didn't need heaters for their chickens. So maybe it's nice if you can provide it, but probably not required. But the heat, they do seem to have problems when it's really high temperatures.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've definitely had I've lost chickens to the heat. I actually moved into my house and there were, I don't know, 20 chickens left over from the previous owners that we took on, and they were fed scratch their whole life. They weren't super healthy, and then once it got hot, you would lose chickens every time, which was sad, and we felt really bad, like we weren't doing the right thing. But we just learned that there are things you can do with the heat. I mean, we've tried all kinds of stuff. I think misters are overall the best thing you can do. You can lower the temperature by 20 degrees with misters if you have them, enough of them set up. One thing with misters is you don't want to leave them on overnight. You also don't want to have too many misters, because then you'll turn your coop into just a soggy mess. Chickens can also drown too. So that's if it's making like a really big puddle, which would be kind of hard with misters, but it is possible. We've also tried little battery powered fans and all kinds of stuff, but the misters seem to work the best. Okay.
I'm sorry, Matt, I cut you off and you were going to show us the nest boxes.
Oh yeah. So in here, this is a nesting box. So they prefer to have kind of an enclosed dark space to lay their eggs where they're safe. And these are actually super cool. I brought these from home when we got these chickens, because usually we don't have nesting boxes necessarily. We have like dog houses that we put them in, because really they're not here. We hope that they're not going to be here for a long time. So the dog houses outside seem to be good enough. But with the amount of chickens we had in here, I wanted to give them something a little more natural, or more like what they're looking for. And so these, I can't remember where I got these. I bet you could get them at Tractor Supply or just a feed store. But they're really cool because you can see they just kind of slide off the wall. So if you need to clean them, they're super easy to clean. They're plastic too, so you can disinfect them if you need to, if you have had a sick chicken. You just fill them with something soft. There's straw in here. And then this little thing they can jump on to get inside of there. And yeah, I think, oh, another thing is this is slanted so they don't roost on this or sleep on it, because they poop while they're sleeping and this thing would be covered. Yeah, but these are cool. I would have these set up for my chickens still, but my pigs hit them off the wall and then try to eat their eggs. So I had to set up something totally different. I kind of, let's see.
But you can have something as simple as we have for our chickens. We made wood nest boxes, and then we just fill them with shavings, and we just use in our chicken coop shavings that they're like flakes that you can use for horses too, and it's cheaper. You can just buy a big bag at a feed store and use that for the nest box. And hens will lay eggs regardless of if there's a rooster around. They just won't be fertile. So you can have hens and get chickens. They don't necessarily lay an egg every day. If it's too hot or too cold, chickens won't always lay eggs. Let's see, we had a question about how high can a chicken jump? Chickens can roost in trees. So they like to be high off the ground, away from predators, especially when they're sleeping, which is why it's important to have those roost bars that they can sleep on, that Matt was talking about in their coop, or just hang out on. I'm not sure how high a chicken can jump, but pretty high. But I don't have like a specific measurement for that.
I have seen them jump at least 10 feet. I mean, even the ones we just recently got, we have them set up behind the shelter in another enclosed space, and they'll go, the first thing they try to do is jump straight out the top, but it's totally covered. I know that's at least 8 feet, but they could jump all the way up to that and grab their feet on the top of that thing. And then they'll roost really high. We have something up there that's probably 10 feet that they'll jump up to. I have an oak tree above my chickens, and my rooster and he's a bantam rooster. He would figure out a way to get up there every night, and I would have to go get him down because I wanted him to be in the coop and not up in a tree. So I would have to take my broom and put it up in the tree and try to get him to step on the broom, and then I'd lower him down. It was a whole process. We just ended up putting like bird netting over the top. It's really high, so they can still get really high up, but I got a little worried about predators like owls. I didn't even mention owls. Yeah, it's owls and hawks, they could take your chickens away. So I guess for feed, I'll touch a bit on that. They're omnivores, so they eat bugs off the ground. I've seen them eat a skink, which it looks like a lizard with a long tail. It made me feel really bad because I think it was my fault. I flipped over a board and there was a skink there and a chicken jumped on it. But chickens live about 5 to 10 years depending on their care. I just noticed that in the chat. But they'll eat bugs off the ground, and then you could also feed them like mealworms and stuff. They love those too. I'd say that's all more for enrichment. You want to make sure that you're feeding them something that is healthy. You can see like protein content and all that. I would tend to go with something that was more for pet chickens and backyard chickens, because it's usually a little higher in nutrient content than something for just growing birds for farming or for eating. There's a lot of different ways you can feed them the chicken food, and that's another good topic on backyard chickens, which is do I feed them crumble? Do I feed them pellets? Do I feed them mash? really all those three things are the same. It's just a different part of the process. So it all starts as mash, and then it's squished down into pellets, and then they break the pellets up into crumbles. And I actually like to give them mash, which it just comes out. It's like a dust. They take all the grains and grind it up, and you still get those little bits of like corn in them. And they like to kind of pick at that stuff. And some of it's actually, it has like higher protein for them as well. And then, see, I already talked about grit. Scratch. So scratch is basically like, I don't know, candy corn. It's it's just it's cool for them. It's like enriching because you can throw it on the ground and then they can peck at it, and that's just one of those natural things that chickens like to do, is peck around at the ground. So this adds just some delicious I don't know, candy for them. But you definitely don't want to just feed them scratch. Here at the Humane Society, at least in Escondido, we mix the crumble with scratch, and only a little bit, and we usually only do it in the winter just because some people will do that to put a little more fat on them during the colder months, but it's not really necessary here. I think it just started with someone's preference, and it's been going and going. We just recently switched over to mash from let's see, we had crumble, but we switched over to mash because I noticed it was cheaper. And the nutrition was the same, if not a little bit better. And then you always want to make sure they have clean water. The things that you feed them in will kind of determine how long it can stay clean, but there's these little hanging feeders and waterers that will keep the chicken from roosting on it and pooping in the water or pooping in the food. So those are cool to have. I like those. And automatic waterers and stuff are really cool too. You just hook it up to a hose and it'll automatically fill, and they can just peck at these little spouts to get their water, which is cool if you don't have, the time to go down there and check when it's hot like this. Those things are lifesavers. Let's see.
Somebody asked as well about, can you give them kitchen compost like fruit rinds or veggie cuttings? I will give my chickens salad sometimes. I'll just chop it up finely for them so they can eat salads. I also gave my chickens over the summer to help keep them cool too. I chopped up watermelon pieces really finely and froze them and gave them frozen watermelon, and that was a great snack for them. I also just kind of threw it on the ground, and that's great enrichment for them too. They have to go and peck at it. So they definitely can get certain veggies. I would just look online for lists of foods that are and aren't safe for them.
Yeah, that's always something to do is check online. You can give chickens a lot of your household scraps, but it's just like pigs where they can eat almost everything, but there are just a few things that you want to look out for, things with pits in them and stuff. But watermelon, definitely. So I agree with you there that my chickens love watermelon, and then we'll just kind of take the rinds that just have a little bit of watermelon left on them and kind of lay them out all over their run, and they'll flip them over and peck at the watermelon. I'm trying to think. Frozen corn is kind of a cool one. They love corn, so you can either just sprinkle out frozen corn when it's cold, when it's hot, and that is enrichment because they can peck around and eat that, but it's also cools them down in the summer. Or freezing corn in like an ice cube thing, which I think there's something like that on the enrichment slide that we can talk about. One thing about the chicken care was knowing about salmonella. If you're handling your chickens, you want to wash your hands always. There's a fun fact. We saw a huge uptick in salmonella in the hipster community when backyard chickens got popular. So don't kiss your chickens, no matter how good it looks on Instagram. I guess we can unless there's anything you can think for the care that I'm missing. Oh, I thought it was something. Dust baths. So that's a thing you'll see them do, and they'll roll around in the dirt. And I've seen them just laying in the sun all splayed out, and it freaked me out because I thought that it was dead, but it wasn't. It was just laying in the sun, and they flip their wings and throw the dirt on them. And I know there's forums that'll tell you how to like make the perfect dust bath for them. But what I like to do is you can take like charcoal that's been, or ash, I guess, from like your barbecue, and mix it with sand or mix it with dirt and put it in like tires, and it makes this nice little dust bath for them. And charcoal the ash will keep mites off of them as well. So it's kind of a way to help with their pest problems without really having to do anything. I guess that's another thing to add is mites are kind of gross. You'll see them not growing all their feathers in, or they'll get these little kind of like gunky spots around their vent, which is where they lay their eggs. And usually that's mites. And I have to go in and dust my chickens with, you can use like diatomaceous earth in their house, which is kind of a more natural like pest control or pesticide, I guess, or it's organic. And they use that a lot on organic farms for their plants. That's a good thing to use to get mites out of your chicken coop. Or even fleas for your dogs. You can sprinkle that in your yard and it gets the fleas out, because we've had people that their dogs get flea treatment, but then they still have fleas. Usually it's because they have fleas in their carpet or in the grass. But anyways, yeah, I guess anything else for chicken care, Tammy?
No, I use diatomaceous earth too. It's perfect for prevention and after the fact. So chickens are, besides salmonella, some other things you do have to watch out for chickens, is they do tend to get a lot of parasites like mites and lice. So just you can buy diatomaceous earth. It's like a white powder. I think it's in the garden department, maybe at feed stores, or even like Lowe's or Home Depot, I believe, sells it too. And you can sprinkle it all over your coop, and that'll help with parasites as well. But they do like to take those dust baths like Matt was talking about. So if your chickens are free ranging and you see them throwing out their wings and kind of rolling around in the dust, they're just trying to take a bath with the dirt as a natural prevention for parasites. Oh, and somebody asked if it should be food grade as well. I believe the one that I use is food grade for the diatomaceous earth.
I feel like most of the time diatomaceous earth is, but I would definitely double check that. I would do food grade if you can, because they're going to be ingesting some of it while they're pecking around on the ground.
And then also, since if you're eating any of their eggs too,
that's a good point too.
Diatomaceous earth. So I will move on to the next slide here.
And that's also something to know about eating their eggs, is anything you give to the chicken affects the egg. So things like antibiotics, if they're on something like that, you don't want to eat their eggs. But yeah, usually they don't really need antibiotics unless there's something else going on, and you just separate them and don't eat the eggs. And you can feed the eggs to them. They actually like eating their eggs. And it gives them nutrition, calcium.
Yeah, so I'll do that too sometimes if I have a cracked egg. That maybe if you have a cracked egg, it can potentially expose bacteria, so we don't want to eat it, but you can crack it on the ground and the chickens will actually eat their own yolk. You know, I just have hens, so they're not fertile eggs or anything, and it's a nice nutritious, it's lots of protein for them too. So we did have one other good question. Somebody was asking, how much space do chickens need to be happy and content?
That I mean, as much space as you can give them, definitely, but I think there are some like basic humane standards, at least for like pet chickens, which are, I think, 4 square feet per chicken. In like their run, they need some space to get away from the other chickens. But I think people go even further with backyard chickens and say you should up it to 10 square feet. But really, I'd say just watch your chickens and you can kind of get a feel for it. Like all these chickens right now, they, I would say, have, well, I guess if you're considering vertical space, they probably all have at least 4 square feet. We'd love to give them more space than that, but we're a shelter and that's, space is hard to come by. But right now you can see there's 1 chicken in here, there's 1 on the door, there's 4 out there, and they all have a good distance between them. But at the same time, like at my house, in their coop, it's pretty small, the one that they go into at night, and they just kind of roost all in a row next to each other, and that's fine too. During the day, they have tons of space, and at night, actually, my pigs sleep right underneath their roost in that same house, which is funny to see. But yeah, I'd stick with the 4 square feet. It to me, it seems like they have adequate space when you go with that standard.
All right, next slide.
That one, no, okay. Enrichment. Oh yeah, okay. So these, I think that's fruit, apples maybe, hanging on those things. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go for it. Yep, those are apples.
Okay. Yeah, I really like those hanging things, and that was kind of what I was saying with the corn, is you can sprinkle corn into the like an ice tray and lay a shoestring through it so it freezes, and then when you crack it, you take the little string out and it has ice cubes along the string, and they can peck at it and it moves around, and it's something for them to think about. So that's always, I think, my main goal with enrichment for any of our animals here is like, just give them something to do and something to think about, something to keep them busy. We put their regular food out so they can just eat it all day if they want to. So we give them something really special in those things. So and we do the same thing for dogs and cats as well. Give them puzzles to try and solve. Let's see. Oh yeah, clicker training I think is really interesting. So I found out recently about chicken camp, which is something that dog trainers will go to, and a few of our trainers that we have here in our organization have gone to chicken camp. And what it is basically it's teaching you speed of like clicking and giving them treats. So it's actually really interesting to watch. If you Google chicken camp, one of our trainers here, she was working with one of our roosters, Rudy McFly, to train him to she was doing target training. So it's like to find something that she's holding up and peck at it, and then she'd give him the treat. And we used mealworms for that. And it's kind of amazing because he was just I'd say typical rooster, where he's trying to avoid people. And then after she spent time with him, he is waiting, and you can see he's like strutting around and just, he's happy because he knows that you're going to come in there and practice like target training with him. But they can do amazing things on those chicken camp videos. They'll do whole obstacle courses like an agility yard, and you'll watch this chicken walking up and down obstacles, and it's looking for that one little piece of food that it's used to, and you can watch it think as it like goes to turn corners. It's doing these things that it's done so many times, and then it gets all the way to the end, and then it gets just one little piece of food, but it spent all this time like getting to there. And it's amazing. I didn't know they could do that. They can do all kinds of stuff. Let's see, puzzles. Oh, jungle gyms. Basically, I just like to build high things for them to climb up, because they just like to be high up. They like to jump around, and you'll see them do that here a lot. If it was still light outside, then you'd probably see them jumping around and trying to get to the highest spot, or flying from one end to the other. But those are, it's really enriching to give them just random things. I have fig trees that died at my property, and we ripped them out of the ground, and we just kind of planted a dead fig tree in the middle because it has these sprawling branches that they can jump around on top of. I think that's probably all I can think about for enrichment.
Even just letting your chickens free range if you're able. In one of the previous slides, let's see if I can go back here. So in this slide, this is actually a chicken coop that my dad built. Somebody was asking about chicken coops, if you should buy one or build one. And really there are tons of different kinds of chicken coops that you can buy or build. You can even, use recycled materials or build an old, Matt took our old shed there and made it into a chicken coop by adding those bars for roofs and having fencing around it. So you just want to keep in mind the chicken safety and giving them lots of space. And so you'll notice the chicken coop that I have has a roof on it because we have hawks and coyotes and other predators where I live who could potentially get to those chickens if they wanted to. So it's important we have a fence all the way around it and a roof on top. But I do let my chickens, I'm fortunate enough to have a nice big yard where I live. So I do let my chickens out during the day to free range. And that's just really great enrichment for them because it's encouraging their natural behaviors of taking those dust baths, of foraging for insects and whatever they can find in the dirt. And it just keeps them, gives them something to do besides just hanging out in their coop. So free ranging is really, I let them out of the coop if I'm in my backyard and supervising them. I do have a tall enough fence that they can jump over that is in between my chicken coop and my dogs so that my dogs can't get to the chicken coop. And I don't, especially with bantam chickens, the small ones, and some Polish and Silkie chickens can kind of have some crazy head feathers, so they can also have kind of their vision is a little bit impaired since they have crazy hair. Them especially, you just want to make sure that you are watching them when they're free ranging so that predators don't get to them. So I'll let my chickens out outside free range in the backyard when I'm hanging out outside. And then instinctively, as the sun goes down, they know to go back into the coop to get away from predators. And then I will close the doors and lock them up. So even just free ranging is great enrichment. And somebody asked, somebody said they use a clicker to call the girls into the run after they've been roaming the yard. That is a great idea. Sometimes I will try and bribe my chickens if the sun isn't down and I need them to get them back in the coop because I need to go inside. I will try and bribe them with chicken scratch like Matt talked about because that's an extra special treat for them. It's fatty, so I give it more as a treat rather than their regular feed. So I will try and take a cup of their chicken scratch to get them to come running. But somebody asked, is it okay for chickens to free range with other animals like pigs and goats with supervision? And I would say it really just depends on if your other animals are okay with them or not. Matt said that his chickens free range with his pigs. I've seen chickens free ranging with goats before, so I think it really just kind of depends on if your animal has a high prey drive or not and might go after small animals. But a lot of animals are fine free ranging with chickens. I personally don't allow my chickens to free range with my dogs because my dogs, some of them might want to eat my chickens. So it really just kind of depends on your animal's personality.
Yeah, I think pigs and goats are perfect for free ranging with chickens. Dogs, most of the time I wouldn't recommend it because you never know. Like, they don't know that, I guess with how they react, how the dogs react to the chickens, they could either want to eat them or just play with them. But even just chasing the chickens die from shock a lot of the time. So basically they are scared to death. And that is something that I guess you don't expect, because it's like, well, the dog never touched the chicken, but it's just like I guess a thing they do in the wild. Is just like, they're scared and this is it for me. But yeah, I don't know. Dogs are tricky. It just depends on the dog. I have Bug, and she doesn't care, but some like she listens enough to not chase them around if I tell her not to. But you can still tell, even in that picture from the beginning, she's looking right at the chickens. She's not doing anything, but you can tell there's some part of her that wants to play with the chickens.
Somebody also mentioned when we were talking about clicker training, and we have a video of, oops, wrong way, sorry about that. We have a video, hopefully you can all see it. If not, we'll also try and include it in our follow-up email of our, one of our trainers clicker training. This was Rudy McFly, one of our available roosters. So I will play this video now, and hopefully you all can see it. And if not, there is a YouTube video of it as well.
Yeah, this is Kristen. She was the one telling me about chicken camp. It's a super short video. I tried to cut it down just to like the main event where he hits the target and then gets his treat. The video is actually much longer, and there's a lot of him just kind of like walking around, and but yeah, it's pretty funny.
Play it now. So hopefully you all saw that. He hit the target here, which was attached to a clicker, and then she clicked and said, yes, that's what I wanted you to do, and then Gabe rewarded him with food.
And I think the thing that is so important with the chickens is that you have to be fast. They need to, since they don't really seem to connect with people as much as like a dog or a cat would, you have to be fast. You got to click and then immediately give them that treat. And there's less room for error than with a dog, who will just kind of wait and be like, where's that treat? A chicken will just totally forget. And if you're not capturing those tiny moments where they did the right thing, then it just takes longer for them to figure it out. But yeah, it's pretty cool. She was going to work on, I forgot what it was, basically picking out a certain color to like peck at. And then Rudy got adopted, which is a success story. And we can, try to teach another chicken some tricks.
But we weren't able to get a cool video of that. So there is a cool video of Rudy McFly, which I'll try and send in the follow-up link as well, is actually able to identify a specific color ball. So chickens are a lot smarter than people give them credit for, and they'll definitely they can still form bonds with their people.
Yeah. And we have a person in our animal care department, Jess. She adopted I believe it's a rooster from here, and he is like the nicest rooster. I just saw her a couple weeks ago. She's standing in front of our director's office just holding her chicken and petting it, and there's pictures of her with her chicken on her shoulder and her cat on her lap, and they're just all happy. And he actually lives in, I think, with the cat at night, because they have this big fat nice cat that just kind of hangs out, and they're like an unlikely animal friendship, which is really funny.
Although you might not want to try that at home. Some cats may want to eat things, but Jess knows her cat and her rooster. Yeah, her rooster came to farm camp that we had at our Escondido,
Oh, that's right.
where we had campers come learn about farm animals and do some activities such as creating, let's see if I can go back to that, in this enrichment site here, they made these apple slices and then hung them for the chickens who could go then and pick at the apple slices. But she brought her rooster to camp, and the campers were just hanging out with this rooster, and he was super sweet, and they were rubbing him on the cheeks, and he was actually falling asleep, and really good, really great rooster. So now we have just some fun chicken facts for you.
I wish I could demonstrate some of those noises, but this was also, there was a note about tidbitting, which I forgot to mention earlier, which I think is funny. They make these little kind of high-pitched clucks, and roosters will do it to attract a mate. They kind of like do a scratchy dance and do their little clucks, and then the hens will also do it to attract their chicks to like some tasty food on the ground. Yeah, I guess I thought the dreaming thing was funny. Oh, I wonder what they dream about. Mealworms, probably.
Yeah, right?
Then
dried mealworms are a great treat, and that's great for enrichment for chickens too. So chickens can dream. They've done research, and they go through the rapid eye movement REM stage that we do when we're dreaming as well. And chickens can make 30 different noises, and they can actually recognize up to 100 human faces.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Which I didn't know. I learned a lot about chickens. Even more. I mean, I have chickens obviously, but I learned even more doing some chicken research.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they were the first to have their DNA sequence, I think, in 2004, which is cool. Or for birds, which I wonder why it was chickens and not like parrots or I don't know, something else. And then the dinosaurs. So I think it was they dated back to the Triassic period or something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. They do kind of look like little dinosaurs, their feet and how they walk. They're like little Tyrannosaurus Rexes. I don't know what speedy means besides how fast they are. Okay, yeah, because
they can actually run up to 9 miles per hour, so they're pretty fast. Besides jumping, you cannot run a chicken.
In the mornings, when we like unbox our chickens and let them out of their coop, they just shoot out of the door, and you'll hear them make one of those 30 sounds, just clucking and flying. And yeah, it's kind of funny. I have a video of my little Chihuahua outside the fence, and he waits for them to start to shoot out of the coop, and then he chases them all like along the fence all the way down, and then he goes back once those chickens just start walking, and then he waits for the next one to shoot out, and then he runs, and it's like, yeah, it's really funny to watch him. And he makes his own weird noises when they do that too. He's like squealing, and he's a nerd. The hierarchy thing, I think, is something that you see all the time when you have chickens or multiple chickens, and it can actually be scary just hearing the sounds that they make when they're kind of determining who is who's ruling the roost. And it's actually pretty cool in here. I haven't seen it at night, but they all have such separate areas to roost that they don't really get in those fights. But we've had hens that we thought were roosters just based on how they were fighting each other. They do the kicking, and they're loud, and it can look kind of brutal, but at a certain point they kind of just settle in and let the ones go to the top. And yeah, you kind of have to intervene at a certain point, because they'll if you get a real mean one, they'll like pluck feathers out and bite their combs, and it's kind of freaky, but it's naturally what they do. I think the thing we just have to remember is the size of the coop and the run. The smaller the area, the harder it is for them to kind of acclimate to each other, and the more issues you'll see with those hierarchies while they're trying to get established, because there's nowhere for certain ones to retreat to. This was, these are actually from the same group that are in this coop right now. This is that one area that I said they could jump straight up to the top. This is normally our turtle yard, where we keep our either turtles in their big tubs, or we keep like desert tortoises when they come in, because it's enclosed and the tortoises can burrow and get out. So it's a perfect place for, it's like predator proof. It's totally covered with pig panels, which are those kind of grid-like, they're welded wire. Those are awesome for keeping a secure area. The only thing to consider with those is just the space in between the welded wire. So you can see kind of in the bottom left, you can see the hardwire mesh that's also around that. But yeah, this I think in probably like 4 hours, I put up some roosts and try to just give them whatever we could, because we knew we were getting 90 or so in that night. But they're actually pretty happy in there, which is good to see.
So that was we've been showing you some of our chickens, but in case you haven't heard, we have lots of chickens available for adoption at the Humane Society. We actually have chickens at all 3 of our shelters right now, San Diego, Oceanside, and Escondido. I'm not sure if the ones at San Diego are available for adoption yet. You can check on our website, but most of our available chickens are at our at our Oceanside and Escondido campuses, where we have more space for them. But we did recently get a whole bunch of roosters and hens, actually from all the way from the Inland Empire, from San Bernardino. There was a, I believe it was a cockfighting ring and also a hoarding situation where there were over, I believe over 400 chickens that someone had with very limited access to resources. So some animal control officers in San Bernardino reached out to, since there were so many chickens, reached out to other organizations to come take some of the chickens as well. And so we do have, we've adopted out, I believe, 74 chickens already, but we took, I believe, in 184 chickens. So lots of chickens still available for adoption, and there are hens and roosters. So definitely check out our website, schumane.org, to see who is available for adoption. And then you can, our adoptions are appointment only now due to COVID for the time being. So you can call, find out more about our adoption process online, but basically you fill out an application online, and then you get a call from an adoption counselor who will go over that animal with you. You can say you're interested in a chicken, and then you can come adopt chickens from us. And chickens are social animals. They do like to have friends, so it is nice to get more than one, have a flock. But you do definitely want to make sure, check with your HOA if you have one, city ordinances. It really depends on where you live if you are even allowed to have chickens. So just keep that in mind. Some people can't have chickens at all. Some people can have hens. but no roosters due to noise, because roosters will, even though we see in TV shows they like to show roosters crowing in the morning, roosters will actually crow all day if they want to. It's not just something they do early in the morning when the sun comes up, so they can be noisy. So that is something that you want to keep in mind and make sure that you are allowed to have chickens where you are. And then also you want to keep in mind what kind of predators might be in your area. And if you get those triple digits, are you going to be able to help keep your chickens cool? But thank you guys so much for joining us. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Let's see, Matt, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Not that I can think of. I pulled up the chat so I can see now the full questions if anyone wants to ask some of them. I do see the one about the rooster showing aggression towards children. I would wonder if the rooster was raised by you, or if it's if it just started out of the blue. Because I think when you adopt one, it's a natural thing for roosters to start trying to be kind of the head of the pecking order, and they'll do that to people, and they'll do it to children definitely because they're smaller. It's hard to train them out of something that's natural for them to do, but I think probably kind of diverting their attention, like throwing out treats and giving them something to peck at. Also, even having, if it's safe, I don't know how bad they're being with your child, but if you had your child or children feed them, so they're the ones that go in with you and throw out the food, then they start seeing them as their food source, which is usually how they'll start to bond with a person, much like a lot of animals, is we're their safe space and their food source. So I would try that. I would try food and just other types of enrichment just to get them focused on something else. Do girls crow in place? Actually, yeah, they do. That it says, do girls crow in place of the males if you have an all-female flock? And that is something that you do see, and it's weird, I guess, at first, because sometimes it doesn't sound exactly like a rooster, but it's just close enough to make you think that you have a rooster. And I've had that happen, and we have it happen here all the time. We just had one returned yesterday because it's a rooster that crowed, but then when I saw it, I still think it's a hen. It just started crowing. They also have, I noticed someone posted up in the chat earlier about, or it might have actually been you, Cami, but it was about when they make the sound when they're laying an egg, and I think that sometimes can sound like a crow too, and it can be a scary sound. But I saw it online, someone called it their egg song, which I thought was funny. But I hear them every day in the coop making that sound. Let's see.
Yeah, hens will make noises too, so don't think if you have hens they're not going to make any noise. They can still make noise too, they just might not be as loud as roosters. But what Matt was referring to was my comment earlier that a lot of chickens, it sounds kind of funny, but they will actually make a noise right after they have laid an egg. It's almost like, I don't know if there's probably some purpose for it, I'm not aware of, but to me it sounds like they are literally trying to announce to the world that they have just laid an egg. So if I hear my chickens making a lot of noise, at least in my house, I know it's either one of two things, because these are two things I've witnessed. It's either they have just laid an egg, which it usually is, or they're trying to alert to a predator. So I heard a whole bunch of ruckus once, and I went and looked in my chicken coop, and there was a snake. It was just a gopher snake. He didn't want to hurt the chickens. I think he just wanted to eat one of the eggs. But there was a snake in the nest box, and one of the chickens was very upset because she wanted to go and use the nest box and lay her egg, and there was a snake. So they were making a whole bunch of ruckus to say, hey, there's an invader in our coop. So hens will definitely make noises too. Somebody else had a question about introducing chickens. So Matt, you might have more experience introducing new chickens than me. You do want to be careful when you introduce new chickens. You might also want to, you want to keep them separate at first too, in case any of them might be ill too, but Matt can tell you more about that.
Definitely what you said about illnesses, I keep mine separate. Well, actually I used to, and then at a certain point I had, a lot of chickens, and I was like, I don't know, I can't separate them all in separate areas. But it's good to separate any animal you get from the shelter for a little bit of time to just see if anything comes up. And that's like those sick ones I mentioned earlier, is they always lived away from our other chickens. But so the ways that we'll introduce them, when we introduce the ones from the previous owners of our house to our new chickens, we waited a really long time, and then we eventually were like, we just got to do this. And so it's actually it was probably a funny sight, but we wait until nighttime because they're roosting, so they're not really paying attention to the birds around them because they're trying to sleep. And you can basically just kind of sneak them up on the roost next to the other ones. And then in the morning they hop down, and they all just seem to know each other. I don't know, maybe it's the dreams that they were having. The new chickens popped into their heads. But I'd try to do it at night. You'll see some chicken fights happen that are kind of alarming when you just throw them in there together. But that's really the only, I think, the reason why I said it's probably a funny sight is that my neighbors that share our fence line, it was right next to this shed that we had the chickens, and we would back our car up and we would take a couple chickens, put them in a crate, and then we would drive down the road over to our other coop. And we did that back and forth until we could get like all 20 chickens over into the other coop. And it was a mess, but it worked. They all eventually, acclimated to each other. There's still some mean ones in there, but they don't really fight as much anymore.
So yeah, if you introduce new chickens, keep them separate at first so you can monitor them, make sure they're healthy, and then I've read that too, and I've tried that as well. Introducing at night, you can kind of sneak them in. That's usually the best way. You still want to monitor in the morning and make sure everybody's getting along, but they may try, and it's natural for them to try and establish that pecking order. And somebody else had a question on here. They said they have a chicken who's missing some feathers. So chickens do molt. They will lose their feathers and get new feathers. But they can also, if it's just one of your chickens, I would say take them to an exotic vet, get them checked out. Sometimes it could be mites or lice that cause them to lose their feathers too, or some kind of illness.
It can also be other chickens pecking out their feathers, which could
true.
be, and that could be related to a different type of illness that they have, or like we have some hens in here that just they're born with their eye covered, so it looks like they're missing an eye, and those are the ones that the other chickens pick on, and they'll start to lose feathers that way. I had one chicken, or I still have her. What was her name? Fester, like from the Addams family, because she gets mites all the time. Like for some reason, it's just her. And she loses all her feathers. She was completely bald on her head at one point, and we just had to kind of pay more attention to her and make sure we're giving her dust baths and you can get poultry dust, which is kind of gross to use because it's a pesticide that's not as food safe as diatomaceous earth. So if you're sprinkling it in your chicken coop, wear a mask, but that'll wipe out like a lot of the stuff in there. So if you really need an extra layer of protection from pests for your chickens, you can try that as well. And that worked with Fester. And then there was about the rooster. I was thinking that has been trying to attack the kids. I think maybe at a certain point it probably just got confident, and the adults are going to be, it's going to be a lot less likely for the rooster to take over an adult, but since kids might feel like they have a little more confidence to try to get them out of there. And it's a natural rooster thing just to try and be the dominant one. But yeah, definitely, I'd say try to throw food out or something. I think that would probably help.
Try and distract it.
Yeah.
Somebody else mentioned, yeah, this is true too. Roosters should be introduced a bit slower because they can kill each other, or maybe just have one rooster with your hens. They'll also fight over other hens as well. So that's something important to keep in mind, is how many of each sex you have together. Somebody else was asking about, it looks like we have one other question and then we'll wrap it up here. Somebody else was asking about how often for the dust bath. So the dust bath is really, it's not something they have to have. They'll kind of do it on their own, even in their chicken coop too. If there's just dirt in there, I might probably just kind of give themselves their own dust bath daily, but you don't have to provide a dust bath for them. And then
chicken drama.
Oh, and one other thing too, if you're still with us, is that we are looking for names for chickens. Not all of our adoptable chickens have names. So if you have some good name suggestions for us, type them in the chat and I will write them down so our chickens can have, you can be as creative as you would or wouldn't like. We've had Rudy McFly. We've had, what are some other creative chicken names you've had?
I like Emperor Zurg because I was just watching Toy Story with my son. Chicka Bob.
And if you have any other questions too, feel free to post those in the chat as well. But I really appreciate everybody who has joined us. We'll be sending a follow-up link. I will try to include the PowerPoint with some notes as well. If possible, feel free to check out our website for upcoming events. Let's see. Somebody said James Bond. I like it.
Macaw! I like that. I like someone mentioned what the sound their chicken makes, and they spelled it out perfectly. It's muck, muck, muck.
So if anybody has any other questions, any other, feel free to share other name suggestions. Penelope, Coco, we're getting some good names here. And also there's a lot of great information about chickens online as well. There's Matt mentioned Backyard Chickens earlier, which is a really great website with a lot of useful information, and there's also forums on there where chicken owners will ask other chicken owners questions, and there will be tips and advice from professionals as well. Definitely check us out if you want some chickens. Check us out on our website, sdhumane.org, to see available animals. Somebody was out taking care of their chickens. Right on, take care of your chickens. And if anybody has any last questions or name suggestions, oh, Matt says he has a Coco. That's funny. So that's a good name suggestion. Feel free to type them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining us. Hopefully we're able to share some useful info with you. And I hope you all have a great evening.
Thanks everyone. Sorry, my earphones cut out for a second.
So everyone have a great night. Bye.